when I first started, I didn't really understand that how much pressure it puts on an individual to try to produce a painting. And if you don't have that pressure on you and you're playing, by the time you have settled in your mind the colors and style and whatever you're going to try to do, by the end of the week, you're fairly comfortable with what you're going to attempt.
Welcome to the Fluid Arts Podcast with your host, Kevin White, where we dive into the wonderful world of fluid arts, including acrylic pouring, alcohol ink, resin art, and more. In this podcast, we let talented artists share with us their techniques, inspirations, and tips for creating amazing fluid art. Whether you want to earn a living making art or improve your work, this is the podcast for you. So sit back and relax as we take you on a journey to learn more about this exciting and engaging art form.
Welcome to another episode of the Fluid Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Jr., and today I have an artist with me by the name of Steve Chase. Today, what Steve is going to be doing is he's going to be walking us through one of his paintings called Dragon's Breath, and he's going to tell us how he created it, and then also something really cool of how he was able to blow up the size. So I'll get into more of that. And without further ado, Steve, he is a member here in the Facebook acrylic pouring community since 2018. He is semi-retired, and art is more than a hobby. Art is life. So without further ado, welcome, Steve, to the Fluid Arts Podcast.
Thank you so much, and hello, everybody.
Yeah, so you're coming to us from where today?
I live in Central South Carolina.
Okay. And how long you been out there?
70 years.
Wow, that is what that is definitely a must be a fun place to be, huh?
It's a great place to be.
Well, that's awesome. When it comes to the painting that we're talking about today, you want to introduce it? It's called Dragon's Breath, correct?
Dragon's Breath. It's a 14-inch by 14-inch.
Nice. And that was the original. What we're going to talk about in a couple seconds is what you did with that. But just kind of wanted to touch on the idea. Where did the idea come from?
Well, for the painting itself, I liked lately in the past year or so, I've gone more toward a puddle type pour, limited amount of colors. This one has 3 colors in it. And puddle pour basically is just pouring out the different colors in really a kind of a bullseye configuration. And then I use an air compressor to spread the pattern. So I hit it pretty hard with air and then manipulate the pattern from there. And this particular one, when I got pretty close to tilting it out, I noticed a pattern in it that looked like a deer head or even a dragon head. And from the mouth, some of the red in the colors came out, so it looked like it was breathing fire. So that's how I got the name Dragon's Breath. And it was a very unique one. I have it hanging. I'm looking at it right now in my office. Turned out very well. I was real pleased with it.
Yeah, and I think you said that so I kind of want to get into the next step. It looks like you said that you hired a professional photographer and you used this specific
G-clay.
G-clay. And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, my wife and I moved in our present home about 4 or 5 years ago, and there was just a hideous fireplace in the family room. And we couldn't figure out what to do with it. We didn't want to go through the mess of tearing it out, but we never could really figure out a way to hide it. And then several months ago, I heard about the giclée process for prints. And basically it's just a real expensive, high-powered photocopier. But it uses a special type of ink to reproduce, like this little painting.
Yeah.
And it was very high quality, very detailed. So I hired a photographer that specialized in it. And that's really the key. The picture you get of your painting has to be very detailed and very high quality to reproduce it correctly on the giclée. And so I hired him to do the whole thing, start to finish. He took the photographs, the high quality photographs, and then he has a giclée printer, and he blew it up to 4 feet by 5 feet, which was a little different than the painting, which was square, 14 by 14. But since it is abstract, I didn't mind that it distorted in the length a little, and you really can't tell it. And he put it on the frame and did a splendid job, I thought. I was really impressed with the amount of detail and how clean and crisp it is, going from 14-inch square up to 4 feet square, basically. Very impressive.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, for the viewers listening, if you want to see the specific painting that we're talking about right now, you can just click in the show notes, and we'll also put it everywhere where we have it on our social media, acrylicpouring.com. But yeah, the 4 feet by 5 feet, that's definitely a big jump from 14 by 14.
In the little article I wrote, I put 4 or 5 pictures in there, and one of the pictures shows the little painting right next to the big painting. So you can see how much it was blown up.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. That's a big difference.
Huge.
Okay. And then I just wanted to go back for a second. You said that you used an air compressor. That's not something, a supply that I hear a lot of our artists use. Is there a reason why you chose the air compressor?
Well, when I first started, which was almost exactly 3 years ago, of course, I did like everybody else. I looked on the internet and YouTube and, got all kinds of advice and ideas. And there was a lady on there from Australia, and her name was Susan, I want to say Danks. And she was fascinating. And she used a hair dryer, and she was real good with it. And I out of all the things I'd seen, to me, that was the most unusual. And it dawned on me to give it a shot. So I did. And with the hair dryer, I got nothing. It just, either the consistency was bad or whatever, but I couldn't do it. And I happened to have an air compressor in my garage where I was painting. And I said, well, this air dryer doesn't look powerful enough. I'm going to try the air compressor. And so I did, and got a lot more success with that than I did the hair dryer. And that's just me. And so I've been working with an air compressor for 3 years now, and I love it. There are a lot of advantages to it. Of course, there's a lot of disadvantages because it's not easy to do. And the whole key is being able to control it. And, over the years, I've done hundreds of pictures. And so I've gotten a lot of practice learning how to control that air compressor. So any painting I do now that has air, I'm using an air compressor.
Okay. Yeah, I was just about to try to get you to explain how to how to use it. But you said it, since it's tricky, and I can imagine it is, it's probably just like you said, the practice piece, right? You probably practice a lot, and it would mean more if, you know, the viewer that was.
I practice more than I try to produce paintings. The longer I have done this, the more I try little areas of a canvas and scrape. And probably, if I want to make a painting, I'll probably plan on doing it on a Saturday. So I'll start off Monday working with colors to see which colors I want to use. And I usually limit it to 3. And, you know, try different combinations and scrape it off and start over again. And I'll probably do that 20 or 25 times a day, just scraping it off and trying another color, or trying a different color, trying a different combination, placement on the canvas, wherever I want to put it, that sort of thing. And I'll tell you the honest truth, I have more fun doing that than I do producing the paintings, because, you know, so many things are going on. There's so many variables that, you know, can work or don't work. And really the only way to find that out is to see it happening. So I'm fascinated with the way the process works, and I practice all the time. Yeah. Right now I'm down to about, you know, I try to do 1 painting a week. And that's plenty. Other times I'm having fun just blasting away, trying different things.
Right. So it's really the opposite approach with, I think, most people, and including myself, just starting off, would do. Like, it's more, it seems like, since you're doing 1 a week and experimenting, you know, if you're doing 20 to 25 times a day, that's probably like over 100 by the time you get to that Saturday, right?
Yeah, at least.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's, instead of making a whole bunch of paintings, you're making a whole bunch of experiments and a whole bunch of practice, so that when you make that painting, you already know which colors and how they're gonna, you know.
Exactly. When
Gosh.
I first started, I didn't really understand that how much pressure it puts on an individual to try to produce a painting. And if you don't have that pressure on you and you're playing, by the time you have settled in your mind the colors and style and whatever you're going to try to do, by the end of the week, you're fairly comfortable with what you're going to attempt. So anybody that's just starting out and asks me for advice, I tell them, quit worrying about making a painting. It's too much pressure. Learn what's going on first. Learn what effect this has against doing that. And to me, it made it a lot easier.
Yeah,
and a lot more fun.
Yeah, that's great advice. And when you're practicing, before you scrape off and use the different paints that you're using, what's the quantity? What kind of puddles are you making? How big of a paint sample are you using for those experiments?
Well, it depends on the style of the painting, but you know, I'm a cell lover. I love cells, and I think the thinner that layer is on there, and I don't mean the paint being thin, I mean the puddle you're putting down. The thinner it is, the easier it's going to be to produce cells, because, you know, if I've got 3 colors and I've got big old heavy layers of paint on each one, what's producing the cell is the top layer being pushed down through the other layers. And if they're real thick layers, it's harder to push the top down without distorting everything. So the thinner the puddle, the easier it's going to be to produce cells.
And when you're talking about cells, do you use anything in addition to those 3 colors, like silicone or, you know, anything like?
I used to use silicone. I don't like it. It's a chemical reaction, and it works, but it's real easy to get out of control. and make things wonky.
Okay.
I use Australian Floetrol, and I think that is the magic bullet. In 3 years, that's the best stuff I've found to help create cells, because it's a chemical reaction, but you also have to understand the physical reaction to cause a cell, and really what does that is a light touch, but what you're doing is you're forcing the top layer down through the other layers. And when you can do that as thin as possible, it's going to make it easier to throw that top layer down through the rest of them to produce the cell. Did that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I've tried, like you say, the silicone, and then I've also tried the Floetrol as well, and it's a big difference. So what you're saying
Well,
is,
Australian Floetrol, it's a big difference between that and American Floetrol.
right, that's what I was just about to ask you. So the Australian part, is there, have you tried the regular Floetrol?
Yes, and it works to a degree, but there's something magic in that Australian Floetrol. I don't know what the chemical is, but it's night and day.
Okay.
It's very expensive. It takes a long time to get, but I chalk it up to, by the time I get it here, it doesn't cost a whole lot more than, a real good pouring medium. So I buy it by the gallon. And I'm always going to have a gallon here before I order again. I've already placed 3 orders with them in a year.
Okay, and you just go to like the website, the Floetrol's website, or where do you go specifically for that?
eBay.
Okay, just simply off of eBay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to specify that you want Australian, and then they'll bring up a page that'll have several companies that will ship to the United States. It's getting to be quite a big thing here now. I like it more than silicone because it's much cleaner. I mean, you know what silicone does. It's real oily, and it sticks with the painting, and you got to, get it out before you finish it. And with the Floetrol, none of that. It produces a much cleaner look, I think. The cells are much cleaner.
Okay, and on the ratio aspect, is that like the only medium that you use? Is it just the Australian Floetrol?
No, I use a lot of different mediums, depending on the type of painting I want to do. I'll use, like Liquitex and glue and regular American Floetrol. I do not use the Australian Floetrol on anything but the top layer because it's so expensive.
Right.
and normally when you're doing paintings like this, your top layer is going to be like a titanium white or a black, something that's very heavy, that's going to sink down through the other colors the easiest. It's very dense. So that's where I would add the Floetrol to the top layer, whether it be white or black or whatever color you think might work. I'll mix that up with the Australian Floetrol, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, something like that. And it will be the very top layer before I hit it with air.
Okay. So the air is essentially the last step.
Yes. Well, not the last step, but
yeah, I know. Yeah. So
the last step would be tilting it out. But yes, to get things going, the air is what counts.
Gotcha. And being that you've experimented a lot, I'm sure you've kind of, I'm curious to ask, when it comes to the top coat, like let's say if you're using resin or any other varnish or finish, do you have, do the Australian Floetrol, does it work with that too?
Well, yes. I mean, the painting has been drying a month before I would varnish it. So the Floetrol really has nothing to do with it. It's just part of the mixture of the entire painting.
Gotcha. So once it's dry, it's just like anything else.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Nice. Well, yeah, beautiful piece that you created today. Well, not that you created today, but that we're talking about today. And once again, the viewers can check that out in the show notes. You already spoke on some advice, but just for the listeners that are wanting to see more of your work, you know, where would they go to see more of Steve Chase?
Well, I have a Facebook page called Chase Fluid Art, and it's really nothing more than the paintings I've done over the past 2 or 3 years. Most of them. It's a pretty long page, and when I post new paintings, you know, Chase Fluid Art gets the first shot at it, and then I'll post it in websites such as yours. And I also have an account with a company called, I can't think of the name of it now.
Yeah, just one of those. I think we were talking before, but you were saying one of those online platforms where they help you with the prints and stuff.
Yes.
And
I can't think of the name of it. America.
That's fine. We can put it in the show notes. That's fine.
Okay.
But,
That's just a place where I send people if they want prints. I don't necessarily want to do that myself, and I don't make any money off of it. I mean, you'll find out when you go there. But you can have prints made of about 50 different pictures that I've done. It's called Fine Art America.
okay.
And just type in my name and it'll bring up, you know, a list of the different paintings I have in there. And if you want a print, you can get one there. I'm going to make a couple of pennies, but it's really more convenient for me to do that than try to print out, you know, 50 of these things and have to worry about shipping them all over the place. I'd rather not get into that. And it's just a way for me to send folks if they really want a copy of one of these paintings.
Yes. So I just want to backtrack a little bit. When you said that art is more than a hobby, art is life, it really makes sense when you talk about how many experiments you do. And imagine that since you have so much fun doing the experiments, that's probably where the life part comes in, right?
Yes. It's fun. You know, I used to play golf. I used to do this, you know, all kind of things, but I've settled down into the painting because it fascinates me and it keeps me trying to keep me young and keeping my brain moving. But, you know, I've got it right here in my house and in my garage, and I could waltz out there and crank up and have fun anytime I want. So it's really, it's changed my life, and I love it. I plan on doing it as long as I possibly can.
Well, yeah, and we definitely appreciate you in the acrylic pouring Facebook community. You're very active, and you keep all of your, you know, your posts coming. So we love it. The listeners love it, and I think they're going to love this one. So as always, members, you know, if you've enjoyed this episode, then comment below. That helps us out with the podcast rankings. And also share this episode with any art friends you know who, you know, spends their time creating and, you know, who also agree that art is more than just a hobby. And then join our Facebook community. It's Acrylic Pouring Facebook, where we have more than 98,000 members who are creators just like yourself, creating, experimenting, and sharing a whole bunch of information just like this one today. And you might just end up on another one of these episodes. So thank you for listening to the 15 different things that we talked about with Steve. I appreciate you, you know, stopping by today.
I thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we definitely enjoyed you. I guess the main takeaway that I've learned is to take the pressure off of creating this masterpiece. Just create like 1,000 different experiments.
There you go.
Well, thanks for having you, Steve, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
If you enjoyed today's episode, then please like and share with your community. And please let us know if you have any suggestions for artists you'd like to hear on our show. This episode is sponsored by acrylicpouring.com. Acrylicpouring.com is the leading fluid arts website which provides fluid artists around the world the inspiration and tips they need. If you are new to fluid arts and want to get started now, then go to acrylicpouring.com to learn the 5 fundamentals of making beautiful acrylic pours for free. Also, join their Facebook community, where every day artists just like you are sharing their newest creations that just might end up on another one of these episodes.